The direction of the electronic drum market has been outlined over the last couple of weeks, and it's probably the most exciting time to be an eDrummer. There are many more players in the eDrum world than before, but one company, as usual, has a large sway on things, and I'm kind of conflicted. I'm going to break down where things seem to be heading and why I think that Roland's influence matters more than ever before at the seemingly transitional phase of the eDrum industry. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the eDrum Workshop. I'm Luke and I hope you're having a great day. If you enjoy electronic and hybrid drums and you want to keep up to date with discussions, news, reviews and tutorials, hit that subscribe button and the bell to stay up to date with all my uploads. I don't think I've ever talked to so many people about electronic drums as I have done in the past week. And I don't just mean all of you lovely people in the eDrum scene. I've actually chatted to a lot of drummers who've never really been interested in electronic drums before now. And there's one clear reason for that. Roland's new VAD range. While the idea of electronic drums with large shells is nothing new to those of us in the know, the V-Drums acoustic design series seems to be resonating with more drummers from outside of the eDrum sphere than probably any other kits have done before. And I've heard many people rightly ask, why? Why do so many people care this much about those particular kits when we've had the option to go out and do this if we want to for years? I'll get to this specifically in a minute, but I'm just going to talk more generally about the acoustic-alike direction first. All of the newest electronic drums announced at NAMM this year, bar I suppose the TD27KV, have one thing in common. They look much closer to acoustic drums. Even the ones that aren't using the full shell depths, like the pad version of the Gaver G9, the F-Note 3 and Roland's lowest VAD offering, the 306, they're still aiming for head sizes and playing surfaces that are closer to acoustic drums. Pad kits aren't completely gone, but there's been a shift in focus towards beefier looking drums, and they're typically aiming for 10 to 12 inch heads even on the smallest of the kits. And this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's been paying attention. ATV brought full-size shells to the wider market a few years ago. The likes of Muzio, Drumtech, Jabeki, Diamond Drums, Stealth Drums, they've all been providing people with custom shells for ages, and A2E conversions have been a staple part of the scene for a long time too. But this marks the first point in time that pretty much every brand is now catering to this market to some degree. Something that was seemingly a bit more niche only a few years ago is now what manufacturers are aiming for. This, I think, is just the market listening to its consumers. There's been a large section of the electronic drum crowd that have been crying out for these options on stock kits for a long time. The fact that acoustic to electronic conversions have been all the rage for years is a testament to that fact. Speaking of which, I've got a video about that coming out very soon, so stay tuned. A lot of people wanted this, and now the market has looked at the likes of ATV paving the way and gone, well, we'd best get some of those. And you know that when Roland jump on board this train, there must be some merit to the idea. There are many people who don't care about their e-kits looking anything like an acoustic, and that's fine. But there's an obvious demand that needs filling, and the general trend that we're heading towards now is one that's trying to emulate the looks of acoustic drums with deeper and larger shells, and the playability of acoustic drums, larger head sizes, and larger and more flexible cymbals. This is where we're heading, at least for the foreseeable future. Roland have jumped into this world now. They announced their kits just before NAMM to steal all the hype, as they are known to do. And then it's been non-stop bickering from people inside the community about why this is amazing, or why Roland are stupid for just jumping on the bandwagon. Now, this is obviously a surface level oversimplification. There's some deeper issues at play here that I'm going to touch on in a moment, but I'm just going to weigh in on why I think that Roland heading this direction is important, whether you like their kits or not. I've done a lot of reading on people's opinions concerning Roland's new kits, and I've seen quite a lot of comments along the lines of Roland are late to the party, they don't understand the market, and that these kits won't do what they're expecting them to do in terms of capturing a larger audience, or even pleasing the people who currently don't like Roland. For a lot of people, the general consensus is that there's a lot of other options already available that are just as good quality or are cheaper than Roland's products, and we don't need Roland to be doing this. And I do think that there's some merit to that train of thought, though probably not the bit about not understanding the market. Roland have been shaping the market for a very long time. They know the power of branding and they sell their products by the bucket load. But on the subject of other brands, There are definitely way more incredible products on the market now, and if there was ever a time that you were going to get by in the eDrum world without touching a Roland product, now it's the most possible that it's ever been. And Roland have taken a while to get into this space. Many serious eDrummers have already moved away from Roland's products, and this seemingly token effort probably won't be enough to bring those people back. But on another side of things, I would say that those of us who are really into electronic drums, the power users, or at least those of us who have spent a long time in the eDrum space, we aren't the majority of the market, and we're definitely not the majority of the potential market. There's a lot of us, but there's also a really large portion of people, and this might be you, who play electronic drums because they have to. Circumstantially, they can't have a noisy drum kit at home, or venues in their area are clamping down and they're facing more and more gigs with lower volume controls. This is a large amount of people reluctantly playing eDrums or sat on the fence that won't necessarily know all of the available options like seasoned eDrummers do. And the Roland brand still carries a huge weight for these people. Put yourself in this position. You're a drummer that's staring down the barrel of having to buy an electronic drum kit that you might not necessarily want. And then you see that Roland, a brand that you recognise and that you see on stages pretty much everywhere, have just brought out a line of eDrums that look and feel much closer to your acoustic kit. That acoustic kit that you still want to play. You might just be tempted to finally pull the trigger. You might have seen other eDrum brands around, but you don't necessarily know much about them. You've never really had that much of an interest in it before now. You're more likely to go with the brand that you know and that you see being used by professionals. And I think that a lot of us inside the eDrum world really underestimate that brand power that Roland still has. Electronic drums equals Roland for a lot of people. Now, this is definitely changing, and I think that a lot of the new products that are coming out of NAMM this year are going to help push that change even further. But I do see these VAD kits as somewhat of a power move from Roland. I think that they want to show that they're still listening to the market even when it seemed like for quite a while that they weren't. And then they're backing that up with their name. In a weird way, Roland throwing their weight behind this might actually be the turning point of that transitional phase that I mentioned at the beginning. I think over the next decade or so, we're going to see eDrums become a lot more accepted as a viable musical instrument, and I think that the acoustic-like design is going to go some way to help further that. Now, I know that that might sound weird, because how does disguising your electronics as acoustic help them get accepted even more? Surely that's just pretending that the problem doesn't exist. But I don't know, something feels like this might be a gateway to more acceptance. More bands start using eDrums with the aesthetics that are closer to acoustic kits. This is closer to what audiences are expecting, but of course the sounds aren't necessarily acoustic-like. And yes, I know that some bands are already doing this, but I'm talking about on a larger scale. Once more people are used to this idea, you can kind of diverge back away from it a bit more, without it seeming quite as jarring. Does that make any sense? I don't know, maybe that sounds ridiculous. Let me know down in the comments what you think. But either way, I do kind of think that Roland pushing in this direction will help grow the market a little bit more, and that's a positive thing. But I'm far from blowing smoke up Roland's backside. Yes, I use and I enjoy their products. I've got a TD50 with the digital pads, I've got an SPDSX, but I do own stuff from other manufacturers, and I'm not blind to the way that Roland have seemingly treated the market over recent years. The electronic drum world was really stagnant only a few years ago. And I think that Roland's control over the market, particularly the patents, was a huge part of that. They held the patents for mesh heads in the US for a very long time. There were products coming out in Europe and elsewhere that the patents weren't valid, that they could use them, but that huge US market wasn't available to tap into if you wanted to use mesh heads. I think smaller companies have had less chance up until recently to do what they've wanted to do inside the market, and I feel like we're possibly a good half decade to maybe even a full decade behind where we could have been if Roland's grip on the market wasn't quite so throttling. The lower cost availability of brands like Alesis, the new triggers and acoustic-like drums from ATV, these things probably shouldn't be quite as exciting as they are on this point in time, especially considering how old most of the technology inside electronic drums still is. Much of this surely could have been accomplished a long time ago, and it's that ATV stuff that I mentioned that's been fueling these concerns. This is why I'm not a huge fan of what Roland have been up to with their new kits. Roland aren't really making any effort at all to hide the fact that they're basically using ATV's design concepts. They're clearly gunning for ATV right now, both in terms of kit configurations and pricing. They've swapped over to using a 3-cone design on their analog drums for the 12 and 14-inch toms. This was a design that ATV kind of pioneered and brought to the market, and Roland have changed their cymbal design to closer mimic ATVs. They're much thinner and flatter profile, much more flexible, they're using multiple sensors and they're available in larger sizes. Now Roland did advance the technology with their digital ride and their digital snare, both of which contain multiple sensors. The PD140DS uses 3 cones in a triangular formation around a center cone. So using multiple cones was already on Roland's radar and inside their products, I can't deny that. And the playability of the digital snare really is an innovation. It's hands down the best electronic drum pad that I've played. And I'm pretty sure that the digital ride has multiple piezos inside it as well. But they didn't really show any signs of wanting to roll this out into their analog pads. I'd have actually kind of expected a full Roland drum kit made up of only digital pads before I would have seen this approach coming. Now I do know that Roland tend to plan very far in advance, and they like to shift their products before they announce new ones, and that makes perfect business sense. You don't want to let people know that something better is coming until you've got rid of the bulk of your old stock. They don't really like to devalue their gear, so I doubt they would have wanted to announce this and then slash prices on their older pads. So there is a slight chance that a lot more of this was planned than we're thinking, and they just happen to be behind the other companies because of having to shift all this other stock. Unfortunately, I just don't have enough knowledge of how Roland's business works to really say either way there. But even if we put all this timing stuff aside, the way that they've been talking about removing hotspots that plague other electronic drums with these revolutionary new designs is almost impressively brazen. Roland pretty much designed the hotspot problem in the first place. I'm not really aware of center cones needing to be a thing before Roland's designs came along. Yeah, it opened up positional sensing and allowed them to market that strength. But it did in turn create an issue inside Roland's own pads for many years. And they've even said this about their 10-inch tom, which is just a standard side trigger, acting like it's some new concept rather than just the way that every other pad has worked for years. And I get that they need to market the selling points and the differences, but it does feel like a bit of a slap in the face to those of us who pay attention. And it also seems like a way of misrepresenting the previous shortcomings of their products to people that don't really know how triggers work. And it has an air of, we can do whatever we want because we're bigger. It's a shame that after so many years of what's felt like market suppression, stopping other companies from using their designs, they would so blatantly just take the concepts of other companies and act like they've come up with them. It's unusual for me to so heavily invest myself into this kind of thing. And I'm very aware that Roland and all the other companies are just that. They're companies. They exist to make money, to sell us things that in theory they want us to be happy with so that they can sell us more things. So when I or other people attach this kind of personal element to companies, it probably seems a bit over the top. And it's definitely something that as a person you need to take a step back from to properly evaluate. But we are people and we do attach human attributes to these things sometimes. And I think that's a huge part of why we've been rooting for companies like ATV and the other smaller companies for quite a while now. We like an underdog, we don't like bullies, and that kind of plays into my thoughts on what's been going on with ATV. I mentioned in my NAMM Roundup video that maybe it was a little bit confusing for some consumers. They've been watching ATV coming out with these exciting acoustic-like eDrums, but then ATV have turned around and focused more on these smaller pad kits. And it kind of feels like this goes against the original ethos that sold us those products in the first place. From a business perspective, they've likely had to do this in order to get enough money to carry on doing the other products. R&D costs a lot, and the beginner to intermediate market is way larger than the higher end market. But as people, we almost look at the direction that ATV shifted towards as like a personal slight. They look like, to many of us, the company that have finally got us, and aligned somewhat with our vision of where eDrum should go. But then some of their promised products have been withheld, and they're seemingly more focused on other customers. It's definitely silly on some level to feel this way, but we are prone to this as people. As much as we're prone to looking at Roland's take on ATV's designs and viewing it as sort of cheating, rather than seeing it for what it is on a more basic level. A smart business choice and a wise marketing strategy. I'm really hoping that these trade tariffs and whatever other humps that ATV might be facing can be overcome. And those of us who support ATV should definitely continue buying their products. Because I think that it would be a crying shame if ATV's lasting impression on the market ends up just being handing Roland Roland the blueprints for their further success. But it doesn't really matter that much how I feel about these practices. The market is moving in this direction and Roland are on board. If their products retain their durability and their usual high standard, there is a chance that I might end up buying some of them. Because I don't hate Roland, in as much as you can't truly hate or love a company. They'll definitely continue to be a huge presence and influence in the direction of eDrums, and more choice in the market is good for us overall. No one's being forced to buy any of these kits. There's finally enough choice to pick and choose more stringently. We need this many players in the game to keep pushing electronic drums to where they're clearly heading: maturity and greater acceptance as an instrument. It took the keyboard and the electronic piano industry a long time to really get to where it needed to be, but I think it has developed, and electronic drums seem to be shaping up in the same kind of way. All that's been happening over the last few weeks is the turning point, in my opinion. This got weirdly deep, and as you can tell, I'm kind of torn on this topic. Please let me know what you think about the future of eDrums in 2020. Whether you think I'm chatting absolute nonsense or that I make some valid points, be sure to comment below, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more of this kind of stuff, and check out one of these videos on the screen. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Stopped all the manufacturers from evil.